Hey guys, this is Stinger from the Ghost Squadron Airsoft team, and today I'm going to be doing a full disassembly of an Airsoft AR-15. This applies to M4s and M16s. If your gun is blowback, if it's electric or pneumatic blowback, then there will definitely be some differences, but a lot of the things will still be similar. Obviously, if you have a gas blowback rifle, pretty much none of this will apply to your rifle. Specifically, we're going to be using my Airsoft G.I FMG4-A1 Hard Next-Gen, my custom Wraith, and we will be doing a full disassembly like I said, so we'll get into the gearbox and show you how to open up the gearbox of this gun and how to put everything back together at the end. Before we start, let's go over the things that you're going to need. First, you're going to want to make sure that you stay safe, so wear some eye protection. There's a lot of springs in here that can throw pieces all over the place. You could lose them. Be careful when you're going about it, but also wear eye protection so that it doesn't hit you in the eye and injure you. Next, your tools. You need a 5mm screwdriver. Use some assorted hex keys. For the most part, you'll really only need the 2mm one, but the other ones can help you in certain situations. Need a hammer punch tool big enough to knock out these hammer pins right here. Needle nose pliers are always helpful, just for moving things around inside. And same goes for this little needle tool right here. You don't necessarily need it, but it's very helpful. So now let's get started. First, make sure the gun's unloaded. Fire it on semi-automatic at least 2 to 3 times to clear the breech, as well as to try and decompress the spring as much as possible. I've already done that, so we're not going to do that on camera. Remove your battery. I've already done that as well. So now the gun is safe. We're going to be removing the crane stock here, and you do that just by pulling up on this lever and then sliding it right off. And it will come off just like that. Now, let's separate the upper receiver from the lower receiver. To do that, you have to knock out the front body pin. So use the hammer punch tool. Just press down on it. If it's a bit tight and you can't get it, you might want to just tap on it lightly with a screwdriver to help you. But that was very easy, so push forward on the upper receiver just a little bit until it clicks like that. Then the bolt catch, if you have one that functions, you might have to press on that because it gets stuck sometimes on the bolt catch. And then there's also a little knob on top of my gearbox right there that I have to pull up, or pull back and then up on the charging handle to get over that nub. After that, everything should be pretty free and it should just slide off very easily like that. Put that front body pin back inside of the lower receiver just to keep it safe, prevent it from wobbling around all over the place. I'm going to set the lower receiver aside because we're going to talk about the upper right now. Inside, you have your inner barrel assembly with the hop-up unit. So if you want to change anything out with that, repair something, upgrade. Also, there is the charging handle assembly down in there. And if you want to take off your handguard, if you have this Noveski rail here, obviously if you have an M4-A1 with a delta ring, none of this stuff is going to apply since M4s and M16s vary so much in this regard of taking off the handguard. They're attached in many different ways. For mine, you're going to need to use a hex key tool to remove all of the screws around it. So there are 6 screws, 2 on the bottom here, 2 on the left side, and 2 on the right side. Those 2 screws just came right out. This is the right side. And then this is the left side. Some of these can be in pretty tightly, especially if it's your first time taking this off. Then they will be put on pretty tight from the factory. You want to make sure when you put it back on that you tighten it up a lot, because you don't want any wobble up here in the handguard. That's really annoying and it can throw off your aim, as well as just make the gun feel like it's lower quality when it's actually not. Just make sure it's all tight. Okay, so now you can see it can freely move. My gun is a free float rail, so there's nothing at the front holding it on. So if your gun is not a free float rail, there might be some other things that you have to take care of. But for the Hard Next-Gen version of this gun, the FMG4-A1, that's pretty much all you have to do to take off the handguard. Now you just have this, the lower receiver. I'm going to put the inner barrel and top-up unit back inside, just for safekeeping. Next, we'll take off the buffer tube. It's held on by a castle nut. If you have a castle nut wrench, then you should be able to easily take it off. It just goes down around, it just goes down and connects with the castle nut so that you can turn it very easily. I do not, so I've been having to improvise. Taking it off is fairly easy. I can just do it by hand like that. If it is on tightly, you might need to just kind of try and find some other way to work with it, or just get a castle nut wrench. Next, there's a plate sandwiched between the castle nut and the lower receiver, and sometimes it can be kind of difficult to separate. I just kind of wobbled the buffer tube a little bit like that to get it to come out. Slide it back against the castle nut, and then the buffer tube as a whole will just screw off of the lower receiver. Try and keep that little plate on there. Alright, now the buffer tube is coming off. Some guns do not have it where it's screwed on directly like that. You just have to take a screwdriver that's really long and put it down through the buffer tube and unscrew a screw that attaches it directly onto the lower receiver. Alright, so now that's off. Now we're going to open up the pistol grip to take out the motor. So on mine there's a heatsink on the bottom. It's made of metal and it's vented to cool the motor. Some guns just have a base plate. To take it off, you're going to need to use a 2mm hex key. Some guns just have screws here that are just like regular Phillips head screws. So just know that yours will not necessarily have a hex key screw. Hold down on the base plate while you're doing this because it's kind of spring loaded. It's got a spring on the motor shaft to hold everything together and to cushion the motor. And I keep dropping it. So you don't want this flying off at you. Just hold it on, be careful. Okay, now it's free. That's the base plate right there. The motor is powered through these two wires. There's a red one and a black one. Disconnect them and then pull up on the motor. It should just be able to come straight out right now. Just like that. Now the motor is out. Set it aside. And then down inside there are two 5mm screws. They are Phillips head screws. Just unscrew them. Once that's done, just pull on the pistol grip and it should slide off of the gearbox. Thread the two wires out. The two screws that held this onto the gearbox will be very difficult to get back in if you let them come out of the holes that they were on. So try to keep them inside of there or you will have a difficult time getting them back inside. So we've gotten the pistol grip off. You can see the bottom of the gearbox here. Next, we have to take out the little button for the magazine release. It's just an L-shaped piece that sits inside like this. And then when you press it, it moves it like that and releases the magazine. So you can see this is part of the L, it just sticks inside like that. To get it out, we have to use the 2mm hex key. So there's the button on it. The screw goes straight down through the middle of that. Try to keep the screw and the button together. This is the spring that pushes it back into place. And there's the L-shaped piece that just goes through the other side, just like this. Right there. Some guns, you may have to skip this step, just because mine has a functioning bolt release that allows you to basically pull back the charging handle, and it will stick back. Realistically, it will be held back, and then pressing this will allow the bolt to go forward into place. It's kind of a coolness thing. It allows you to adjust the hop up easier, and it's also slightly more realistic. So this just has a pin that holds this in place right here. You can just knock it out easily with the 2mm hex key tool that you had, that you use for all the other screws on this. So now it should be able to move pretty freely, but it is still attached because it goes onto the other side. It is another L-shaped piece that is like this. You press it on this side like that, and on the other side it has a hook that goes around this, which is attached to the other side of the gearbox, and when you press it, it just pulls that down, and then that releases the bolt. So to get it out, you have to press down on this and then pull on this right here. Alright, this is it right here. That's the L-shaped piece. If you have trouble getting it out, just play around with it. You might need to stick a screwdriver down into there and just lift on it a little bit. It's difficult to show you on camera, but you'll see once you get there. The gearbox is still held in by 2 body pins. There's the center one right here, and then the rear one. For the rear one, you can just use the same hammer pin tool that you used for the front body pin, except this one's held in quite a bit tighter. So just take maybe like the screwdriver that you used or just something else to lightly tap on it and help you get it out. Like that. And then for the other one, this one's much smaller, so you can use the hex key that you used for pretty much everything else. This is the 2mm one. This is that pin. And then the rear body pin likes to slip back in. The center body pin is not retained, as you can see. I just pulled it straight out of the lower receiver, but the rear body pin is just like the front body pin. So now the gearbox should be able to come out. You might want to press on it just a little bit from the bottom. Make sure that see like this, the rear body pin is kind of stuck back into it. It likes to go back in there. So just check that if it's not coming out right away. There we go. Thread the wires out of the lower receiver. Now you just have the lower receiver. You can put the rear body pin back into it just to keep it there, as well as the center body pin, just so you don't lose these pieces. And now you have the gearbox. There are 10 screws that hold it on, 4 on the top. These are all the same exact size, so same length. 1 in the back, 1 on the bottom, and then 2 in the front that hold on the bolt release mechanism. So we'll start with the 2 on the front. That was very easy. Make sure you keep track of which screws come from which spot on the gearbox, because they are different sizes. So you want to make sure that you put them back in the same spot that they came from. Alright, this bolt release right here, this is the mechanism for it on the other side, and this screw just goes straight into it like that. It's kind of hidden. Try and keep all these pieces together just so that you don't lose anything, and so you know where everything goes back. So now those front ones are out. I'm going to move down to the bottom one. That's out. Now before I go any further, I'm going to talk about decompressing the spring from the outside. So you can see on this how I have a cutout right here that allows me to pull the anti-reversal latch. So I'm going to use the needle tool. And that will fully decompress the spring, at least as much as it can be decompressed inside here. It is still under some tension just because it's in that confined space in there. But you can see now I can push back the air nozzle, and that will be moving back the tappet plate. If you don't have a cutout like this, you can make one, just mod the gearbox shell, or you might be able to reach inside from where the pinion gear goes into the gun and pull it like that. This isn't absolutely necessary, but it does allow you to be a bit more safe and prevent things from just flying everywhere when you open it up, because this allows you to have less tension on everything when you open it. Also, as another safeguard, I'm going to put a hex key down through the spring guide. The spring guide is basically what is at the back of the spring. So you have the spring guide like this, and then the spring goes around it and gets compressed against the spring guide when the piston comes back. So this will hold it in place and prevent the spring guide from flying out with the spring when I open it up. This is a safety precaution. So I would advise that you put something down into there. You can use a hammer punch tool or a screwdriver, but I'm using that hex key because it's really the only thing I have right now that will fit down into there. Just make sure you don't use the 2mm hex key, because you're still going to need it for taking off all of the other screws. Now I'm moving to the back screw. That's out. It has a little washer on it. Not all of the screws have this, and if your gun is not an FMG4, it might not have it. Even if your gun is an FMG4, it might not be on it, but it's on the rear one and the top 4. So now I'm moving to the front of the top screws. You might want to carefully just kind of hold the 2 halves of the gearbox together as you do this. They probably won't pop apart as soon as you get the last screw off, but just as a safety precaution. Okay, so all the screws are out. Now you're probably going to have to pry the halves apart. For mine at least, it's attached pretty tightly. So I take a flathead screwdriver and just stick it into this little opening at the back and pry it open gently. Alright, now you can see it's coming apart pretty well. Hold on to whatever it is you have back here. Pull it apart the rest of the way. Alright, there goes the spring guide. And there we go. Half of it is off. Okay, so this little piece, this is part of the self-shimming thing on the spur gear. That came off. So I'm just going to put that right back on. It was stuck to the bushing right there. Also, some shims from the sector gear came off on this bushing. They're stuck to it because of the grease that's on the, well, actually all over the inside of the gearbox. So make sure that you are conscious of the shims and their location. Check the left half of the gearbox shell to make sure, or sorry, this is the right half, but check the right half of the gearbox shell to make sure that there's nothing stuck to it. And if shims did come off, put them back in their original position. Alright, there we go. So, this is the spring guide. This is the spring right here. This is an M120 spring. Here's the piston. This is a Lonex Extreme Toughness reinforced piston. Has 10 steel teeth. The second to last tooth is removed and the last tooth is reinforced. It's extra thick. This is the bevel gear right here. It interfaces with the pinion gear from the motor. This is the spur gear, and the bevel gear interfaces with the spur gear, and then the spur gear transfers its motion to the sector gear, and the sector gear is what pulls back the piston. You can see that this sector gear does not have teeth all around it, like pretty much every sector gear. Actually, I think, yeah, every single sector gear does not have teeth all around it because that would actually strip the piston. Some gears by Siege Tech have two sides that have teeth on them for higher rate of fire. The sector gear also pulls back the tappet plate, and the tappet plate pulls back the air nozzle. My air nozzle is an air seal nozzle that has an O-ring on it. So when the sector gear moves back like that, it pulls back the tappet plate, and that allows another BB to come into the chamber. And it also, when it goes back into place after the little sector gear thing right here has gone around, it releases the tappet plate, and then the air seal nozzle will seal up against the BB, and all the air will come out and propel the BB forward. So back here is the anti-reversal latch. This prevents the gears from spinning backwards, because if they do spin backwards while your gun is shooting, you'll strip something, probably the piston. It has a little spring on it. It's a weird looking spring. So there we go. Pretty much every single part inside of here was made by Lonex because they OEM'd this gun. If you don't know what OEM stands for, it's Original Equipment Manufacturer. Alright, I pulled the gears out. You can see that from the factory, this gun wasn't shimmed very well because the spur gear has left little trails of lubricant, of grease, on the gearbox shell, and that means that it was rubbing up against the gearbox shell right there. So I'm going to re-shim the gun after I clean everything off and then re-lubricate everything. Alright, I've disassembled and degreased everything. I've cleaned it. Now it's time to re-shim the gears, reset the engagement position of the pinion gear, and then re-lubricate and put it all back together. Alright, I re-shimmed and re-lubed all of the gears, so now all those are back into place. Now I'm moving on to the compression parts. Alright, the compression parts have been re-lubricated. Now it's time to put the gearbox back together. Okay, so everything is back in its proper position. The seal is good. It's ready to be fully reassembled. So it can be kind of tricky to get the spring and spring guide back into position in the back of the gearbox shell. You can see it's got two tabs on either side that fit right into the little cutouts on the gearbox shell. So that's basically where you need to get it to. If you're having trouble compressing it, use whatever it was that you used to hold it inside of the gearbox when you opened it up, just to kind of hold it in place while you pull it back. I'm not going to do that because I actually find it easier to do this way. Hold everything down while you do this. And don't let it go, otherwise it's going to fly away. Okay, so that's in. It will naturally hold itself. But now it wants to pop up. Okay. So I'm going to put this back inside of it. Take the other half of the gearbox shell. Make sure that all the wiring is threaded through the proper locations and that it's down, because you don't want to get pinched in between the two halves of the gearbox shell. Okay, if you're having trouble lining things up, take that needlepoint tool and just use it to move the axles of everything around. These are the axles of the gears. Sometimes the anti-reversal latch won't be in the proper position. Make sure the trigger's in the proper position too. It has to drop into some holes as well. That seems good. Alright, now I'm going to put this upper front one on. And then the lower one. I'm going in this different order to try and ensure that I apply pressure to the gearbox shell equally. So next I'm going to put a screw in the upper left hand side. And I'm going to do the top two ones that are left, two in the middle. Alright, Now we're going to put this back on. Make sure that this screw goes down into it like that. I'm going to screw in the back one first. Then the front one. Make sure all the screws are tight. Okay, gearbox is now back together. Time to put it into the lower receiver. So here's the lower receiver. Remove the body pins that you use to hold in the gearbox. So that would be the rear and center. This one actually comes out, the other one's retained. Take the gearbox, align it properly, and then make sure that the wires go through the proper position. This one, obviously, since the gun is rear wired, will go out through the back where the buffer tube would be. And then these two have to go down through where the pistol grip would be because they have to go to the motor. Whoops. Like that. Make sure that you let the trigger come down through the bottom like that, as well as the bottom of the gearbox down here. It should just drop into place just like that. Line it up so that the rear body pin can go back in. You might have to move it around a little bit until it drops through. Like that. Alright, rear body pin is in. Now the center one. Alright, that's in. This one can be kind of difficult to get in fully, so sometimes I just take a screwdriver and hit it in just so it's all the way through. Alright, now we have to put the bolt release mechanism back in. To do this, it's pretty much the same way we took it out. Press this little catch on the side in, and then just push the L-shaped lever into place like that. It's down. It works because when I press it, that little thing moves. Take the pin that holds it in place, put that through, just like that. That's in. Everything's good. Here is the magazine release L-shaped piece. This goes in like that. I'm gonna hold it down there. Put the spring down over the circular piece. And then take the button. Okay. Hex key. That's good. Put a magazine and test it. Alright. So that works. Now we will put the buffer tube back on. Thread the wire through. Screw it on. And it might be so that it's kind of to the left like this, so just line it up properly. Drop that little plate into position, and then screw down the castle nut. You want to make sure that you get this tight, get the castle nut tight, otherwise it might wobble a little bit. Tighten that up. Okay, there's no wobble. Now we can put the pistol grip back on. If you happen to lose one of the screws that go on the bottom, I have a good trick for getting them back in. Take your needle nose pliers, drop it into the Phillips head of the screw, and then just release. The tension on the pliers will hold it in place like that, and you can just line it up easily into the hole, clamp the pliers together, and release, and it will be inside the hole. Thread the wires back into the pistol grip. And then line the pistol grip back up with the bottom of the gearbox. Sound like that. Take the 5mm Phillips head screwdriver and then tighten the screws on the bottom. Now the motor, make sure you line it back up the same way it came out. Just drop it right in. That spring should show you that it's in position like that. And then reconnect the wires. Take the base plate for the pistol grip, screw it back on. Alright, let's put the crane stock on. Make sure that the wire goes into it properly, and then do exactly what we did when we took it off. Pull up on this lever and just slide right on. Now it's on. Good. Set that aside. I'm going to put the hand guard back onto this gun by lining up all the holes for the screws and then just dropping them right in. Gotta make sure that they're tight because I don't want it to wobble at all. Alright, one final step. Oh, wait. Before you attach the lower receiver to the upper receiver, make sure you knock that pin back out. Slide the two together. You're going to have to get the charging handle back over that little nub on the gearbox. Pieces should just fit right together. Drop the pin in, and you're done. Okay guys, that's the end of this video. I hope this helped you do whatever it is that you want to accomplish, or repair, upgrade, just inspecting, reshimming, relubricating, whatever it is that you wanted to do. I hope this video helped you, and I'll see you guys later. Joseph's back here.
Yeah. Pretty sure I hit Frankie. Whoa!